Our Old Testament lesson this day comes to us from the book of Jeremiah, there in the 8th chapter. My joy is gone. Grief is upon me, my heart is sick. Hark the cry for my poor people from far and wide in the land, saying, Is the Lord not in Zion? Is her king not in her? Why have they provoked me to anger with their images, with their foreign idols? The harvest is past, the summer is ended. And they say, We are not saved. For the hurt of my people, my poor people, I am hurt. I mourn and dismay has taken hold of me. Is there no balm in Gilead? Is there no physician there? Why then has the health of my poor people not been restored? Oh, that my head were a spring of water, and my eyes a fountain of tears, so that I might weep day and night for the slain of my poor people. Turning to the New Testament, we read there in the Gospel according to Luke, at the 16th chapter. Jesus said to the disciples, There was a rich man who had a manager, and charges were brought to him that this man was squandering his property. So he summoned him and said to him, What is this that I hear about you? Give me an account of your management, because you cannot be my manager any longer. The manager said to himself, What will I do now that my master is taking the position away from me? I'm not strong enough to dig. I'm too ashamed to beg. I've decided what to do so that when I am dismissed as manager, people may welcome me into their homes. So, summoning his master's debtors, one by one, the manager asked the first, How much do you owe my master? He answered, 100 jugs of olive oil. He said to him, Take your bill, sit down quickly, and make it 50. Then he said to another, And how much do you owe? He replied, 100 containers of wheat. He said to him, Take your bill, and make it 80. And his master commended the dishonest manager because he had acted shrewdly. For children of this age are more shrewd in dealing with their own generation than are the children of light. I tell you, make friends for yourselves by means of dishonest wealth, so that when it is gone, they may welcome you into the eternal homes. Whoever is faithful in a very little is faithful also in much. Whoever is dishonest in a very little is dishonest also in much. If then you have not been faithful with dishonest wealth, who would entrust you with true riches? If you have not been faithful with what belongs to another, who will give you what is to be your own? No slave can serve two masters, for a slave will either hate the one and love the other, or be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and wealth. So end our lessons for this day. I went to the gym on Monday, as I usually do, at 5:30 in the morning, and was greeted by an officer who said, You may not realize this, but there's an ordinance in Skaneateles against proselytizing and evangelizing on street corners. And I looked at him and he said, I saw you out on Sunday morning with your hand up waving to people. And I said, for the Catholics and Episcopalians, it's the only chance at salvation these people have. We tend to confront each other. We tend to create crises. We live from crisis to crisis. And all we wind up doing is managing our crises. When crisis happens, we tend not to do as the children described so well this morning, of saying, I'm sorry, or thank you for helping me, but instead we hide. We hide from our families, we hide from our neighbors, we hide from our bosses, we hide from ourselves, and we try to hide from God. Human beings have become like ostriches, that we bury our heads in the sand, trying to hide, instead of saying, I'm sorry, I forgive. We tend, when we're confronted with a crisis, to say, where was God? Why didn't God rescue us? Why didn't God save us? Is there still a God? In the time of Jeremiah, when he was a very young boy, King Josiah came to the throne. And Josiah determined that it was wrong to have all these separate little chapels and little altars spread around the country, because they were practicing in various different ways. So he commanded that all of the altars and all of the churches should be destroyed, with the exception of the one at Jerusalem. And there all the people of Israel would come once a year for their sacrifices, just as they also came to pay their taxes to the king. And because they knew that in Jerusalem was the temple and in Jerusalem was the king, they would know that they would be safe and they would be secure. But by having only one temple, the people stopped worshiping each day, stopped praying each day. And the nation of Israel was invaded by Babylon. The people began to believe that they would be embarrassed, that they would be persecuted, that they'd be carried off, but still God would be faithful, no matter what, because they had the temple at Jerusalem. And then the temple at Jerusalem was destroyed, and their faith was destroyed, and they hid from themselves. What Jeremiah describes in this passage is the feelings of God, the weeping of God, knowing that the people have done wrong and the people need to be chastised to be taught. But it hurts to do so. How many of us have had to discipline our child at some time, and it broke our heart to do so? To hold firm, to steadfast, to do what you know that they need, but it breaks your heart. The problem for Jeremiah is not that the people sinned, but the people sinned without having any regret. The people sinned and they self-righteously believed that even though they went after whatever they desired, they took what they wanted, they broke every one of the commandments. Because there was a temple at Jerusalem, they'd be okay. And God says no. It's not about possessing the temple. It's not about going once a year to worship, but instead following the statutes, taking them into your lives, living lives that are honorable and truthful and in relationship with one another. We live in a time of great change, probably more change than any part of American society or any society has ever known. In the last 2 years, we've gone from having cars that had a key for ignition to simply pushing a button. We've gone to have drones that can deliver pizzas. We've got cars that can park themselves. We have a world that is far different than it's ever been. And with that, we've begun to question whether all of our realities are as we thought, whether the facts are still the facts, or whether, if you listen to one channel, they appear to be one way, and if you listen to a different channel, they appear to be totally different. So what are we to believe, and what are we to do? Does the world still follow the same commandments, the same statutes? Do we still represent what we always did? In the short years that Judy and I have lived here in Skaneateles, we've seen over 50 century-old companies in central New York close. Not just move to Mexico, but close outright. What is Camillus if there is no Camillus Cutlery? If there's no Camillus Casket Company? What is Mottville if there's no Mottville chairs? If there's no Mottville rope? I went swimming last week, and when I went to get in the water, Skaneateles Lake is at least a foot down. What is Skaneateles if Skaneateles Lake is not here? Do we still believe? Or what do we do? When we face crises, what are you willing to do? It's not about how much you're willing to pay. It's about what's truly of value. If your life is commanded of you, if you're going to die tonight, what would you do? How would you live your life differently in these last few hours? As a pastor, I'm often frustrated by living life, that it's not the way it is in the Bible. I love the story of Moses raises his arms and the Red Sea parts. I've stood here at the north end of Skaneateles and raised my arms many, many times, and the lake doesn't part. I love the story of the burning bush. And I've tried gardening, and my bushes turn brown, but they don't talk back to me. I love the story of Balaam's ass, where he's a prophet who's about to curse Israel that they would lose. And his donkey turns around to him and tells him he's being an ass. I love the story of Jesus walking on the water. I love the story of the baby, the Savior. He is born in a stable. And the kings and emperors from around the world, all the wisest people come and bow down before him. But in my lifetime, I haven't seen that. And when you do see a biblical story come to life, you get really excited. It's really cool to see it's real. It happens just that way. In this presbytery, we had a camp. We've had it for over 50 years. Those who met at camp loved it. Those who went to camp and found faith there could see nothing wrong with this camp ever. They sent their kids there and had a wonderful experience. But those who looked at the bottom line saw only debt. There was a mortgage for the camp's purchase. There was a mortgage for the lodge that was built on the camp. It was budgeted to pay the interest every year, but the principal never went away, and we always faced new balloon mortgages for a greater and greater interest. And we budgeted for it, but it still went in the red every year. And then different children would get a bee sting or break an arm or a leg, and their parents would sue the camp, and we had that debt to pay as well. To be completely candid and honest with you, I also have a reputation as being the camp closer. In one church that I served, the church owned a camp, and we turned it into a conference center and a medieval festival like Fairhaven and Sterling Valley. We had horses and knights there, and we had conferences that took place, and it became a great fundraiser supporting the church. In another presbytery, we had a camp that we realized we couldn't afford. The insurance had gotten so large and the debts to maintain it so big. But we found a glass-bellied lizard that's an endangered species. And so we sold it to the Nature Conservancy, and they were able to take it off of our hands. So when confronting the camp in this presbytery, I knew how to sell camps and asked that an audit be done, that we gather together all the debts for the camp. And in that way, thoroughly understand just what there is here. But then on the night of the presbytery meeting, I read this passage. This parable that Jesus shares about the dishonest steward. Suddenly it occurred to me, throughout the last 50 years of this camp, it's always been in a debtor relationship. It's always been with this yoke upon its neck that they couldn't pay their bills. What if it didn't have the debt? What if we could take that off and forgive it all? Besides which, the debt was owed to us. So, as the owner of the camp, we were paying ourselves back for what we had. And if we did have to sell it, we needed to clear up all this indebtedness. So let's pay it all off, completely. $500,000. Let's absolve the debt. And now, let's see what happens. If it fails, okay. We tried, and it's now debt-free, and the children who experienced it had the best possible program available. But maybe it will succeed. Who knows what could happen? I'm waiting to hear what's happened this year with the camp, because we took off all debt and tried to see things differently. In the first 130 years of this church's life, we received many different wills and estates, and they often began with the words, "This shall be invested as the most prudent individual would do." And then the Great Depression happened. And after that, that inscription was taken away, and instead of being as the most prudent person would do, it was as a reasonable investor would do. Because we came to realize that if you don't take risk, you're not going to have reward. But today, with the way in which the stock market has been, with the way in which the economy has been, the number of trusts that have been broken, it's hard for us to trust. It's hard for us to believe in the future. It's hard for us not to hide from ourselves and our children and God. In the history of the church, there's one will that stands out and always amazes me. This woman decided that when she died, the church needed to receive $100,000. And each of her children would also receive $100,000. And when she died, she was penniless. But she had let us know, and she let her children know, that she wanted to give us $100,000. That counts more than the actual money does. Money's just money. We live in a world where finances go, it's like monopoly money. It just disappears so fast. But she let us know just how precious you are to her. In this life, it's easy for us to operate according to business, to operate according to the cultural expectations of the time, trying to keep up with the neighbors, trying to have it all. It's hard for us to remember those basic statutes, the 10 Commandments, to honor God, to trust God, to listen to our parents and honor them, to keep the Sabbath, to not lie, to not cheat, to not steal, to not commit adultery, to not covet. It seems so basic for us. And yet, we've hidden from ourselves and hidden from God. Among all the stories in all the world, the Garden of Eden is one that people seem readily to know. I'm intrigued by it because last week we read the story of creation, and as God created everything in creation and everything interdependent and everything related to each other, the last thing God created was the human being. And the story says God rested. I don't believe God went to sleep. I don't believe God was tired and God quit. But instead, that story ended. And the story picks up again with today's story of God created the human being first and then brought all the different creatures to the human being and asked, what do you want to name it? This crazy thing with a long neck with spots, what should it be? The great beast swimming in the ocean, what should it be called? And we were given responsibility for every different thing by naming them. And then God set us in the garden with a partner, a helpmate for life, and said, you can have anything your heart's desire. You can have anything and everything, except one thing, the apple, at the center of the garden. Leave it alone. Is God this great tempter? Is God looking for us to fail? Why did God put that tree in the garden with us? God knows all things. God knew we were going to screw up. Why did God put it there? Why didn't God put a moat around the apple? Why didn't God put a fence around it? Build a wall to keep it out? But God didn't. Instead, God left it right there for us as temptation. I have to believe that God is not a great tempter. God is not a great judge who came through the garden that afternoon saying, where are those naked people? But instead, God's a teacher. God's a teacher who knew that we would have difficulty with this and wanted us to learn what it is to sin. There is no great book that says these are sins and these are blessings. This is good and this is bad. Mom told us what was right and what was wrong. Don't touch the stove. But There's not a book of it's always a sin. It's always a blessing. Instead, a sin. Throughout time, a sin has been what you hide from God, what you hide from yourself, what you hide from all the world, that which you can't face. That's a sin. And our responsibility is to forgive each other. The serpent is described as being more subtle than any other creature because the serpent knows that they will not die, but something will die. Something will die when they take of the apple. Their relationship with God. What Adam and Eve and the dishonest steward and Jeremiah and the voice of God all describe is that what is truly of value, what is truly important more than anything else in all the history of the world is our relationships, our trust. And when trust is broken, it can't just be fixed. It takes a lifetime of rebuilding and lifetimes of relearning. It's not about what we have. It's not about what we possess. Skaneateles would still be Skaneateles even if Skaneateles Lake were not there because of our relationships. Because we are a people of God, the body of Christ, together.